and welcome to my thoughts on mentoring student teachers through virtual student teaching. I'm going to do this in Zoom. So here I'm going to quickly, if I can, share my screen so you can see my PowerPoint while I'm talking. So again, mentoring student teachers through virtual student teaching. My name is Dr. Annie Frank. I teach at DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois. I teach primarily physical education teacher educators, and we have an exercise science program as well, and a master's degree online in sport, fitness, and recreation leadership. Our physical education majors in Illinois and at DePaul get a P12 license. The state of Illinois requires 2 5-week placements in a quarter system, 5 weeks at the elementary school and 5 weeks at the secondary school. In the fall of 2021, I had 8 student teachers. One actually deferred from his planned student teaching in spring so that he could teach face-to-face in the fall. However, here we are a full year later and we're still not face-to-face physical education in our area. Most schools in the Chicagoland area are just starting back. Our clinicals are not even occurring face-to-face in that schools that are offering face-to-face physical education are not allowing any visitors in their classrooms, and that includes pre-service teachers. So our students in their clinicals and our our student teachers are all experiencing 100% online physical education. The State of Illinois Board of Education declared that no EdTPA would be required during the governor's emergency action plan. So I'm sorry if you're looking for EdTPA challenges during student teaching virtually. I will not be covering anything related to EdTPA. One of the most profound challenges I thought that I faced personally was the lack of accountability or the readiness of our university supervisors. As you know, there's a cooperating teacher at the school. There's a university supervisor who goes out to do visits and interacts with that cooperating teacher. And then there's a university professor like myself. We run the seminar, usually, well, in our situation, it's a 2-credit-hour capstone seminar. And we interact with the students during student teaching. My university supervisors were totally caught off surprise in the last spring and in the fall, taking a very passive approach. Maybe it was the technology. I think it was just not realizing how to handle the virtual environment, but there was a lot of intervening I had to do on behalf of the student because again, the university supervisors were quite passive during this time, as opposed to really engaging with the cooperating teacher and student teachers. Again, I taught the 2-hour capstone seminar. I did want to mention that in our curriculum, we do not have a standalone technology course. We cover technology uses, apps, websites, different software offerings in our secondary methods class. I would characterize the entire state of student teaching virtually as student frustrations. That is I guess the theme that I want to convey is that our students just found themselves extremely frustrated. I think the most significant aspect of it was their inability to get to know their students face-to-face. They were used to those clinical observation hours, the clinical engagement, spending time in school, spending time in an elementary school or a high school, and really getting to know students, receiving that feedback, that engagement, the dialogue, engaging with their cooperating teacher, and it just wasn't there. I think that they all kind of had a sense of, this isn't what I signed up for. I think learning the new technology, although most of them were pretty tech savvy, still just the time that it took to learn the new technology, Google Sites, Google Classroom was primarily what was used. And Flipgrid, Seesaw, Zoom, they were all used, and students, they caught on, but again, it was learning the new technology, how to integrate, how to upload their files, how to find grading systems and that. I think that they also were very frustrated by the lack of direction from their cooperating teachers. Some of our students find themselves student teaching in sites where the cooperating teacher doesn't have a real set curriculum. And sometimes, and you've probably experienced this, they're told, well, you can teach whatever you want. And then in this virtual environment, it was, well, we just have to, keep them busy, get them moving if we can. In health class, cover, that was a little bit more structured, but the cooperating teacher really wasn't giving them a lot of direction. They were frustrated because students weren't engaging. Students would not turn on their cameras. They were not participating in class discussions. They were not, even if the student asked them to follow video, they would just have their cameras turned off and not engaged. Cooperating teacher found this to be acceptable. I think a lot of schools are promoting the idea that the student should be given the choice. So this lack of student engagement and no way to force the student to engage in the class. And I also think that the plain redundancy of the online platform was really frustrating for them. I mean, we talk about how we're all zoomed out. Well, teaching day in and day out, they found it, again, not what they signed up for online, and just emotionally very, very frustrated, upset, really, wanting to do something and just finding themselves so unable to do what they felt that they were prepared to do. So my approach, obviously my mentoring, as I'm calling it, was just support, primarily support for their mental health, for their mental well-being. And I did this myself, and then I also designed the seminar so that they were receiving a lot of mentoring from their peers. So I required weekly synchronous Zoom meetings. They wholeheartedly all attended. It was required, but they all were there eagerly every week. And I would just start the meeting with allowing them to talk. I would pretty much structure it and start with my most talkative students and just ask them to share. Talk about what was happening in their lives and what was happening with their student teaching. Everybody had to talk, and everybody did feel safe enough to talk. I also assigned a sharing. I asked them to all prepare to share something that was working. So after we went through one round of each of the 8 people talking, then it was what's working for you. A lot of sharing during this phase. I created this video, or I'm using Flipgrid, and they found it very easy to do so. And then I would set up breakout rooms and ask students to go into certain breakout rooms depending on what they wanted to hear more about. I also set up breakout rooms and asked students to choose what they wanted to talk about that was not working. So for instance, if they needed more technology, they would go into a certain breakout room. If they needed more ideas for games or activities, they would go into breakout rooms. If they just wanted to talk about how to deal with classroom management and getting students motivated, they could go into a breakout room. So I really allowed them to make choices, to really engage with their peers, and to share as much as possible. So they really got a sense of, I could do this, depend on each other. Obviously, I engaged with them and offered my ideas, but they had had enough of me over the years with their methods classes and their assessment class. And I shared when I could, but I really wanted them to find a sense of accomplishment in getting through the student teaching that they were finding so frustrating. They created videos, they shared their videos. They were using each other's videos to teach. They were using each other's data recording sheets. They were using each other's homework assignments. I was suggesting they assign homework, assign journaling for their students, assign one student, they came up with extra credit for engaging in class. And even though the cooperating teacher was a little bit not on board with this, they went ahead with it. And it was, if you turn your camera on, if you answer a question, if you respond to somebody who has commented about something, if you gave feedback about a certain game or a drill or use of equipment, they collaborated and they got very creative about the use of equipment in their spaces. One of the students actually it turned an empty room in their house into like a recording studio, and he invited any of the student teachers to come over and use it to record video, so that there wasn't a lot of background in the shot. So they really thrived off of engaging with each other, helping each other, working through it all together. And I think one of the most important things that I could add was just I encourage them to be really realistic. This was new to everyone. It was new to the students. It was new to the cooperating teachers. It was new to them. It was new to us, 100% virtual for most of us. And I encourage them to be realistic, do the best that they could, and not to be too hard on themselves. They were judging themselves too harshly. They weren't getting that feedback, that engagement, that interaction with students that means so much to them. They really weren't getting the level of positive reinforcement from their cooperating teachers. And so mentoring them positively, mentoring them whenever they came up with something creative or shared or worked through a difficult situation, we really encouraged each other, and we got through it pretty well. I think of the 8, 2 decided not to try and get a job. They said they did not want to really find a job until virtual physical education was over and that they could teach face-to-face. I think the other 6 went on to get jobs, and we keep in touch all the time, and I think that they're doing okay. But again, the level of frustration of not being able to engage in students and to be doing virtual physical education was just at a level that I just did not anticipate. So I wanted to share my thoughts with you about our process, and I hope that you found this my session to be valuable and worthwhile of your time. Thank you for attending.